Welcome to the Humans of Hospitality podcast with me, Mark Cribb. We are a week into our semi-release from lockdown, and down here on the south coast, I have to say it has been an interesting 7 days. Clearly the rules on meeting one person at a time out of home are being pushed, and the beaches in particular are very busy, but then it is 24 degrees and beautifully sunny outside. And I would say that most people are trying to maintain physical distancing, but you can fit an awful lot of people onto a 7-mile beach. On a personal level, we've opened our beachfront takeaway, we've created a one-way queuing system, we're using sanitised buzzers so that people can disperse before picking up their food, we've got PPE for the team, and we have 20-minute alarms set for sanitation of all surfaces, and customer contact surfaces are cleaned after every customer. But on occasions, people do queue too close together, or others think we are doing the wrong thing encouraging the public to come outside. And I would implore anybody who sees a business or other humans struggling with the new world not to instantaneously take photos and plaster them all over social media with angry and shocked emojis. Rather, let's try and work this out together. The vast majority of people are thoroughly decent. So please ask to speak to a manager at any business that you go to and have an open and honest chat about what you see. Provide some objective advice without the anger and the emotion, and let's see if we can all find a long-term way to navigate back into whatever the new norm will be. One thing it is not is spending the rest of our lives in our houses. Those of us with smaller entrepreneurial end of the hospitality industry are seeing our livelihoods that we have often spent decades building perilously close to full-scale collapse. This is not simply a drop in profit for a few months or a tweak to a bloated balance sheet. This is losing your car, losing your house, losing your assets, maybe having 15 or more years of your life reset, losing everything you have worked for. No more family adventures, kids moving to new parts of town, going to new schools. It really is that real. Yet many of us feel we could open in some guise now. Big terraces outside could be managing physical distancing probably better than open public areas on many occasions. It's hard to limit the people on a beach or in a park, and much easier to limit those allowed into a beer garden or a private terrace. Whilst clearly the health and vitality of all humans and the protection of the NHS is key, it feels like many of us would now like to be given the benefit of the doubt to do the right thing and open some aspects of our businesses with integrity and public safety key, but saving our livelihoods before the summer is over and the business completely disappears. I do hope the government agenda is flexible and moves fast as we demonstrate our competence as an industry. Anyway, I've gone off on a slight tangent, so let's introduce this week's guest. I really enjoyed meeting Phillip Eeles from Honest Burgers on a previous episode back in December 2019. I was not necessarily surprised, but I was certainly pleased to see the level of obsession and care, and actually the fact that the integrity of the co-founders make the name Honest exceptionally apt. I came away from our chat with nothing but respect for the guys, the business, and what they stood for. And this time it was just Phillip, and he was equally as enthralling and honest and happy to speak the truth. We touch on his role of late looking after the out-of-London venues and his 180-degree turn on how those out-of-London venues should be managed. We then get into the impact of the pandemic from charity and long-term integrity, where Phillip tries desperately hard to walk the fine line between honesty and political correctness, but comes out with his personal integrity and diplomacy intact. We chat about the National Time Out campaign, and Phillip has an eloquent way of explaining the need for an open and symbiotic conversation with landlords, and how the whole economy, not just hospitality, in essence needs a period of hibernation for all, but a fast rebirth afterwards. Honest are out of the pits pretty early with the shift to takeaway, and we look at the financial viability of that, as well as the operational challenges such as PPE required to operate in this new space. All in all, I thoroughly enjoyed our chat and very much hope you do too. If you do, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your player of choice. I know you probably always hear this bit and skip over it or think you'll do it later, but please just pause and do it now. You can do it on your phone, just open the app and follow your nose. Just a 5-star click is great, and if you can write a little something, all the better. It really does help me out. And to leave a tip or buy me a beer, head over to our Patreon page via humansofhospitality.co.uk/donate. Phillip Eeles from Honest Burgers, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Hugely appreciated. Where are you? Are you at home at the moment? Or?
I am at home. Yeah, I've just got back. Actually, I've been to our head office this morning, so I've actually managed to venture out for the first time in a long time. I'm back home.
Amazing.
In East Dulwich, sort of Peckham area.
Cool. And has that mainly been your life for the last sort of couple of months in lockdown? Have you been working from home? Or?
Yeah, no, I set myself up with a little sort of office. I don't really have an office at home, but I set myself up a little station in our bedroom to get away from my two young kids who are kind of running right in the background most of the time.
That seems to be the thing. I've done a few of these now, bedroom-based podcasts, and my FD actually refuses to have an office at home because he doesn't want to mix it, basically. So whenever I've been Zooming with him for the last couple of months, he's always been sat on his bed, which has been mildly disconcerting for the first couple of weeks.
It's fun. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Like, when I looked around these guys, particularly lots of exec calls I've been having, I'm MD and ops directors, and I feel like I know their houses now, which is an interesting lens.
Yeah. I know my FD's nose because he's not very good at holding the computer while he's working, and I got mainly his sort of nose and forehead, which I've sort of probably had enough of. I hope he doesn't listen. No, he doesn't. So that's perfectly safe. Yeah. So for those of you, we had a chat a fair few months ago, long before we knew the utter carnage that was going to impact our industry. But for those who haven't listened or don't know, can you just explain a little bit about what and who Honest Burgers are, please, and your role there?
Yes, so I am one of the co-founders of Honest. Started the business back in 2010, technically, down in Brighton, actually, with our little tent set up. But first restaurant 2011. Obviously, we sell burgers and chips. We've got 37 restaurants now, including one Deliveroo Edition sites, a few outside London. And I guess my role at the moment is a good question. I could probably take up a podcast on that alone. But I guess increasingly it's just sort of sitting alongside a very experienced and composite set of exec kind of directors in the business, and trying to just complement their skill sets with a kind of honest lens on everything. Really, that's my job.
Yeah, so when I spoke to you, I can't remember what it was, but maybe 6 months ago, you just sort of stepped back into a much more hands-on ops role for a period of time. I think you were covering somebody. Has that all finished now, and are you back into being a grown-up?
Well, good question. No, I'm still kind of doing it, actually. So yeah, no, well said. I've got this thing about I like being on the front line. I like experiencing kind of the job. People sort of taking information in different ways, don't they? And I think I struggle unless I'm kind of in there doing it and seeing it and breathing it. So I was doing a regional director role, which is you sit above two area managers who have an area each of about 7 to 10 restaurants. So I was doing that as a fill-in when we last spoke. And actually since then that area has changed, and I'm actually more involved in the out of London sites. So I'm kind of still doing a bit of an RD role. I've got one area manager underneath me, Victoria, and we're looking at the 7 out of London sites, which is really it's really interesting because we wanted to we thought we'd group them together as one big area rather than tagging Liverpool onto a London area and Manchester onto a London area, which is the kind of standard go-to setup as I understand it. We felt we'd have a better chance if we put them all in one place.
Is that working?
It was.
It was, yeah. I was going to say, yeah.
I think it was actually. I think if you'd asked me 2 years ago, expanding out of London, I was obsessed that we made sure every single member of that team felt part of the London setup. Obviously, we're a London-centric business. I was obsessed that we've got to bring them down. They've got to do everything the London guys get. It's all got to be the same for them. It's really important they feel connected. And actually, I've done a huge 180 on that now. I actually think what we should be doing is celebrating the fact that they're not in London and they don't want to be in London. If they wanted to work in London, they'd work in London, but they don't. They want to be in Manchester or Brighton or Reading. So the thing that those 7 restaurants share is the not Londonness. And by putting them together, we saw an instant kick, I'd say, on culture between them, where it's like, yes, great. I don't want to come to London all the time. Let's let's talk about how we embrace what not being in London is about.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I really stand by it. And I think we were a month into it, and then Corona obviously hit the world. So,
Because one of the things you're known for, and one of the things that really impressed me is the fact, you've got 37 venues, but you would never know that. And particularly, I suppose, you put a lot of work into your local beers and some of your local suppliers, and deliberately trying to make it feel like it's not too big, I suppose. So was there a particular trigger that made you shift to that sort of, not London-centric perspective, I suppose?
I think it's all part of the same conversation, and you're spot on. I mean, we're obsessed with being anti-chain to a fault sometimes, probably, but I loved it. I love it. In fact, and obviously you do. I love it when people are surprised when I tell them we've got 37. I think it's brilliant. It means that we're striking that right tone. It was all intertwined. It's all part of the same project, which is actually saying that these guys in London, out of London, don't want to be in London. Let's embrace it. They have to be managed differently. Like, we can't expect them to jump on a train for 2.5 hours every time we have a team meeting. It's not reasonable. So we just had to change our ways of working a little bit.
Nice. Well, you certainly had to change your ways of working a little bit more now. So let's sort of start to focus a little bit. If I can take you back to March, and I guess I'm interested particularly in that week, because I remember it very vividly. We had those sort of 3 or 4 days, I guess, when Boris had come out and announced to the nation not to visit bars and restaurants, but this was sort of pre-furlough and the support packages. Do you remember that week, and do you remember how this played out, and how you were sort of feeling personally, and what your sort of thoughts were on the impact on the business during that period?
Yes, I do. God, it was a challenging week, for sure. It was interesting. Obviously, we felt it coming. I mean, there was, we're all friends in this industry, so I was on with the Pizza Pilgrims boys and Flatiron guys and the Dish boys, and just talking to them and going, guys, what's going on with your sales? Anyone see? And it was all the stories were like, touristy areas are struggling a little bit, and then suddenly, obviously, it all just kicked off. And it became quite clear that sales weren't going to be the same again for a while. There was that sort of period of vagueness, wasn't there, from the government, where they said that we probably shouldn't open, but it's our decision, which was really helpful from kind of obviously insurance points of view and stuff like that. But I think at the point at which Boris Johnson came out and said that, I think an hour later we closed all our restaurants for eat-in. We were kind of waiting for him to tell us. And then, we had this horrible period of thinking, well, we listened to that message from Rishi Sunak, who said, help is coming. We're going to sort you guys out. Just bear with us. And I think it took, don't quote me, was it 3 or 4 days between shut your doors and Rishi coming out with the 80% package. And honestly, I've never been more proud of us as a business, I have to say. Like, there's been a lot of work, and I think we probably touched on in the last podcast, that we've been really driving the kind of employer, best employer kind of standards within our business, and trying to be a people business, people first business. And it really, really kicked in that week, because we got around the table and said, all that matters now is that we don't make a single person redundant, or we don't sack a single person. No, people need to know where their rent or where their food is going to, how they're going to pay their bills and put food on the table. We need to give people that security, with or without the government scheme. So we created this 50% Corona pay, we called it, and it basically guaranteed all of our staff, every single one of them, 50% of their earnings, of their average earnings, until the end of April. So this is obviously March 23rd, I think, was the moment. I forget exactly the dates, but we projected ahead 5 to 6 weeks with a guarantee to all our staff that they would get 50% of their pay based on their average earnings over the last 12 weeks. And just the response we got was unbelievable. I mean, tears. We went live in our internal workplace tool that we use. We went live to deliver the news, and there was the messages we got back were quite astonishing, because obviously at the time you were hearing all sorts of stories of 1 million people in the hospitality industry being laid off overnight and this kind of stuff. And obviously everyone's friends, they've got friends that work in other restaurants, and hearing like, oh, I've just been sacked, what's happening at Honest. And I was so genuinely humbled and proud that we said, you know what, it's the most important thing is that our guys feel secure. Obviously,
that must have been a big number, because how many people do you employ?
750. Yeah.
Right. So do you remember how much that was going to cost? I mean, was that coming out of your reserves, or?
It was, yeah. It was a calculation we made based on obviously current cash flow levels, and a really, really fantastic support and conversation with our investors, where we said, look, this is the company we want to be. This is the company you invested in. You need to back us on this. And to their credit, the guys at Active did exactly that, and they said, "Yeah, we're in your corner on this one. We'll back you if you need the cash. We're here."
Wow, that's awesome, isn't it?
It was
Because there was a
incredible.
lot of companies cutting every DD and every piece of expenditure, and hitting the panic button, I guess. So nice to have a investor with that sort of buy-in.
Yeah, they knew how important it was to us, but I don't want to try and ham it up too much, because it also seemed a bit obvious to us, and that if you're just going to cut your people loose, like this will end. And I know that at the time, if you'd asked me, will it go until October, which is now been suggesting, I would have laughed at you. But it will end, and at some point you're going to need those people again to kickstart your business. And I maintain, and I'm going to steal Joe Grossman's line now from Patty and Bun. I think he said it in an interview somewhere. Companies are going to be judged on how they treated their people in the last few months. That's not going to be forgotten in the new world. You can't just come back and go, "Oh, hey, yeah, so we're back now. Do you want to come back and work for us again?" People are just going to tell you to fucking do one. Like, if the first sign of trouble, you cast them aside. So I think it was absolutely important to us that we did whatever we could to send a message to our guys that said, "Look, we're gonna try hard." And I can't tell you the response we got, and still are getting, the kudos and the trust that I think we've now garnered in our team. This furlough stuff is complicated, and we've made, of course, we've made some mistakes here and there, but everything now is done with I know you guys are on it, just giving you a heads up rather than, "Why haven't you paid me properly?" or "What's this?" There's a real kind of sense of we're in this together now, which is amazing.
Yeah. So how did you feel then when Rishi came on the telly that night then and said, "All right, 80%"? How did you feel?
Oh man, I mean, it was euphoric. We were glued to the TV. I think we were expecting. We knew something was coming. I think we were all sort of taking our bets in the exec team. I think it ranged from, he's going to say 50 to 70. I think no one saw 80 coming. And so, within 3 days and so much work went into that Corona Pay, modeling it out and trying to administer it and figure out how we were going to actually do it and communicate it. And then 3 days later, obviously, it was all ripped up and was completely redundant. But as I say, the impact of actually just offering it was unreal.
Yeah, I think so much of that probably 10-day period was never have I made more decisions faster and then rip them up again. Even that weekend where a little bit different because we're not in London and it was Mother's Day weekend and the forecasts were good and we were like, right, we're probably going to be closed from Monday, but can we trade one last weekend? We had a few hundred people booked in across the group for Mother's Day, and we thought we would get through that. And the speed we were making decisions, and then luckily at least it was the Friday night and not the Saturday morning, because we probably had a couple of grand's worth of stock arriving on the Saturday morning that we did manage to cancel on the Friday night. But my goodness, what a crazy period that was of constant.
Oh, it's hilarious.
swing.
I mean, we were like saying, there was a thing that was like, well, whatever text you're sending now, whatever message you're sending now as a kind of, here's what you think might happen, just let's look at it again in a week's time and just have a good laugh. Because I remember when it was starting to kick off, we were like, right, how do we get hand sanitizer? How do we make sure that we know if our staff have got it? What are we going to do if someone gets it in our restaurant to stop it spreading and getting that person out of the business? And then it was like, well, that's actually completely redundant, because we 5 days later we closed all our restaurants. It was like the way things just spiraled. It was just hilarious, to the point where we were having a conversation again. Well, this is what we're saying right now completely irrelevant in 12 days time. So we started talking about like a 12-day business, where we just go, well, they'll just go take 12 days at a time and we'll see where we're at.
Yeah, and even 12 days was excessive. 12 hours sometimes. We were making decisions in the morning and completely changing them by the evening with regards to opening hours and all that kind of stuff. But I certainly opened a fresh beer when Rishi came on the telly and tipped him. So it was good. He did save us. So you'd modelled all the way through then to the end of April, but at that point, like you say, none of us expected this to carry on for this length of time, I suppose. At that point, you were confident then on the success of the business, and when you were doing these models, how far ahead could you predict that you could survive for? And as it's gone on a week by week, and now we're sort of seeing it roll into months forward, have you had to change that, make any more cuts, and how long can you continue this trajectory, I suppose, and be comfortable that you can come out the other side?
Well, I think that in the spirit of what we were just saying, I can't give you too many projections going forward, but I'll do my best to indulge it.
No worries. Well, I'm not asking for a date commitment, but just in general. I mean, I had a spreadsheet running with probably 25 different scenarios and different models of half open, fully closed, don't open till next April, open 2 days a week, and I'm just wondering, what that process of forecasting is always a dark art, but in the current situation, just some ideas around, how you're doing that, I suppose, and how you think it might pan out going forward.
I think, with the Corona Pay in the first instance, we sent out a salary sacrifice bot as well for people. So, there was discussions around, to kind of make that Corona Pay work until the end of April and beyond. There was a need to kind of gain a 25%, I think, across the board salary sacrifice. So the Corona Pay was geared towards the hourly staff and restaurant staff, and then there's obviously all the central support guys. So we first of all made a decision that we weren't just going to impose a 25% everyone. We were going to ask people to contribute. We felt that was a better way to do it. Everyone's circumstances are different. Some people could say I can do 50, and other people can only do 5, and that's just fine because of whatever your scenarios are at home. So we did that and we got to a 30% actually, which was really good. So that was kind of a commitment that helped us model out that end of April package. And then obviously with furlough now, we're in a position where at the moment I think, I don't remember how many staff left on furlough, probably about 600 left on furlough at the moment. We've reopened 22 restaurants now for delivery only, which has taken about 130 people back out of furlough. So I think for the time being, obviously furlough can carry us through, but we're obviously all thinking about a situation where furlough ends, and what is the trading situation at that point, and do we feel like in October, if that's ends up being the end date, do we feel like we're going to be back to normality for trading? I absolutely not. I just can't see it. Even if eating is allowed, I don't think you're going to see normal trading levels for a while. Certainly not until the new year, at least, I'd say. So have we completely eliminated the threat of redundancies or laying people off? Absolutely not. And I'm happy to say that out loud. And even if our staff are listening to it, they'll have already heard this. I think again, one of the products of our kind of behaviour in those first few days is that we've got to a point where we don't shield anything from them anymore. Well, not so much saying that we did necessarily before, but there's always a bit of a filter, isn't there? And I think we've tried to kind of shed those filters. So, our staff are very much aware of what we're up to right now, and that is, we're trying to create revenue streams away from burgers to create jobs. It's as simple as that. We're looking at sort of honest at home DIY kits, which went out a couple of weeks ago as a little mini kind of project. We had 250 that we gave away, that we sold for charity, but we're thinking, can we get those up and running? And that could get another 10, 15 heads out of furlough to manage honest at home. And could we sell sauces and stuff like that? So there's a kind of retail arm of the business we're looking at now. Can we do anything else on Deliveroo from a virtual brand point of view? We're exploring a few avenues there. And just trying to think of funny ways, we're talking to Secret Cinema at the moment. They've got a project that they're working on, and maybe there's a link up there for us. So we're just trying to find as many possible ways to get creative, to create roles, with the mindset, obviously, that normal trading isn't going to resume for a long period of time.
Yeah, no, I've shared that journey. We launched a drive-through at our hotel, which was the only sort of venue that we had a car park 2 weekends ago. And again, just trying to think, how on earth, are we going to come out the other side of this? We're fairly lucky on the seafront that we can open and do a little bit of takeaway. So we're going to reopen that tomorrow, but it's absolutely negligible. But the hotel was this sort of pre-order, prepay, pull into a car parking space at your allocated time, food goes straight in the boot, and off you go. And all of this is just tiny little ways to try and keep some people employed, because like you, I don't really see us coming out of this until next spring. And the problem for us is we're very much in a tourism sort of seaside town, so we make all of our money in the summer, and that's what gets us through the winter. So and the weather has been absolutely immense since this happened.
I know, yeah. It's not always good for burger sales, I'll be honest. Like hot weather doesn't always help us, to bear. So
no, well, that's where we can balance out. You have the cold days and I'll have the hot days, but it's been it's been painful to watch. Yeah, no, very, very much so. Yeah, and it is a time, I think, for creativity and creating some new ideas. Before we come back into the sort of future plans and stuff like that, you very quickly at the time mobilized your team. You had a lot of fresh food that needed to be used. I know you did some work with City Harvest. Can you just explain that sort of closure time and the kind of, I suppose, the camaraderie? And it was across the hospitality sector, I suppose, where despite the fact that it was getting absolutely pummeled and in utter chaos, it really seemed to step up and start to help with charities and key workers. So what was the honest experience of that?
Yeah, I think like everybody else, we felt like if we can do something, we should. And I'm going to be bullish here and put my neck on the line a little bit and say what I think probably a lot of people are thinking. And we had stock to use, right? So I don't want to see that stock going in the bin, so we're going to use it up. And we want to do the right thing. We want to support the NHS. We want to try and feed people, but there's selfish reasons for doing this stuff as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're telling the truth, Philip. It does make sense. Yeah, go on.
Good. Well, honest is we're called honest, aren't we? The other day.
Honest burgers, exactly.
Listen, we're good people. I promise. Like we're not, we do these things because we want to do them, and we try not to shout about them too much. And I'll be lying if I said I hadn't been. There's been stages where I've got a little bit grumpy sometimes with some overplaying sometimes with some of the stuff we've been up to, because you do it because you can. And the reality is we had because we've got our own butchery making our own burgers, and we sell 50,000, 60,000 burgers a week. We had about 2 days worth of meat in our fridges, and I mean like 20 kilo honks of chuck steak and rib cap. So we had a heck of a lot of meat, and we have our own bowl chopper. So what can we make? A shitload of lasagna and bolognese, right? So it just made sense to us to start ploughing through it. Obviously, we'd furloughed a lot of people, and in the interest of, particularly at that stage of just keeping people in their homes and making sure our staff were safe, we only had really myself, Tom, and a few other of the exec that we could really lean on. So a sort of team of 5 of us got in our prep kitchen and just started making up a load of bolognese and a load of lasagnas with the potatoes and the meat that we had left, which was an amazing thing to do and the right thing to do. I guess what I'm getting at now is that, and I want to assure you and your listeners that the challenge, the gauntlet is now laid down. Which companies are still going to be doing this in a year's time? Who's going to still be trying to link up with City Harvest, or they're local. Maybe not so much the NHS, because I think we've got to be really wary that we don't treat the NHS like a charity. But who is going to continue those relationships? And I think that's certainly the challenge I've laid down within our business. And I hope we can meet it, because it's not just about capitalizing. I guess my feeling is that there's a PR win here, isn't there? Look at us, how nice, how good are we knocking out food to the NHS? Where yes, good on you doing it, but it's a long-term thing for me. So I think the challenge for us now is to try and figure out how we can feasibly and realistically support some worthy sort of food. I don't want to use the words charities, food or organisations that support the community with wastage and stuff like that. So that's the challenge for me.
And the challenge of doing these podcasts remotely is you can't see the big grin on my face because I'm laughing. And you're absolutely right. There's been a certain amount of PR bullshit, I suppose, and it's been the same down. I think London's had a much more of a focus of this pandemic anyway, and more support has been required. But even on a local level, I've seen sort of restaurants and places saying that they buy one and we'll donate one to the NHS, and we're delivering food down to the hospital. And I phoned the hospitals, and I was on a conference Zoom call a couple of weeks ago with all of the local homeless groups and vulnerable groups and charities, and I was kind of like, we're here if you need us. I've got a furloughed team, and I've got kitchens, and I've got restaurants, and nobody needed us. There was actually capacity. The YMCA were like, you know what, we're good. Our kitchens are well production. We can do more. I spoke to the directors at the local hospital, and they said, no, the nurses are fine. They don't need food at the moment. Maybe after this, buy them a drink or buy them a beer. And we were like, yeah, absolutely. We'll look after you guys. But yeah, it's been interesting to see people just, some people, like you say, doing it for the wrong reasons. Although there's been some great stuff and some genuine need in certain parts of the country. It's not.
Listen, I can't knock a single. I'm gonna get in trouble for this. I can already feel it. I can already feel the messages I'm going to get from my fellow founder. I need to. I cannot criticize a single person for jumping in and getting food to the front line when they needed it, and they did need it. I think we pretty quickly saw a similar story that you. Is actually the NHS saying to us, "Whoa, hang on a minute, we can't take 100 burgers every day. Like we got enough." Right? So, yeah, and I think that it's doing things for the right reason, and I think. But it's a challenge. Like it's tough because you do these things, and you want your customers to know that you're doing it because other people are doing it, and you suddenly think, well, God, if we don't say it, then people think we didn't do it, and it's like, oh God, and you go through this internal turmoil of like, we don't really want to talk about it, but we kind of feel like we should. And then so we try to strike that balance. And I personally think we achieved it. So there we go. Before our marketing team kill me when they hear this podcast, I think our guys did a fantastic job of just drip feeding that stuff in and saying, look, here's what we've been up to, and trying to do the right thing, I guess. But there you go. That's a long answer.
I think
I don't think I should have had I'm
think
thinking a glass of
people,
wine. That maybe was a mistake. There we go.
People will appreciate your lack of bullshit factor, and I think it stands, like you say, the long-term integrity and your long-term values and what you do on a long-term basis is much better than some of the quick wins that certain businesses could take at the moment. I don't think there'll be any doubt over the integrity of what you guys do on a day-to-day basis.
No, good one. And look, I'm indulging myself given that I haven't got my co-founder sat with me this time. So, maybe I should put in brackets my views are my own or something. They're not honest. No, I'm very opinionated on charity. And honestly, I can see my co-founder Tom now with his head in his hands. But, Bob Geldof stood on the stage for 20 years and, hasn't made a blind bit of difference, So, we're honest, we've always had a philosophy pre-corona. We've always had the philosophy that actually if we're going to do this kind of work, we're much more a hand up, not a handout kind of business. We don't like just raising big sums of money and just giving it to big organisations. If we're going to do charity, we try and do it locally. We give it to like a scout hut, or we work with people like Working Chance, and we take which takes women out of prison, and we get women back into employment. And we've got about 15 to 20 ladies in the business right now. And I don't like calling that charity because it's not charity. That's a hand up. That's as an employer. We now have an opportunity as a larger employer to create opportunities for other people that don't have them. And that for me is exciting. So we've always had that approach, honest, that we like to kind of try and do hand ups, not handouts, which I guess is where some of that my reticence came from.
No, I agree, and it's one of the key things. Don't know you guys well, but we've met, and now this is our second conversation. But I really came away from our last chat, and I'm sure there was a part of the podcast where we discussed, what came first, the honest name or you guys and your approach and your integrity, because all the way through it, it really stands out, I suppose, that you're not part of the bullshit. You do the right things for the right reasons because because it genuinely is the right thing to do. So I don't think there'll be any doubt of that. I don't think you're going to be in trouble anymore, Philip. I think we can move on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good. All right.
I promise. So actually, one thing you mentioned a little while ago, you mentioned the word insurance, and it's been quite interesting, I suppose, across the sector, the lack of insurance. And I just wondered, have you had a more positive experience? Because you mentioned it with regard to being told to shut or not shutting. Are you one of the very few that might be insured, or is that dead in the water?
I think this is going to sound remarkable, isn't it? I'll just stick with this vein now. I think we got it.
Yeah, really?
I don't know 100%. I know we'd applied for the for it. I think we spoke to and obviously, they're doing whatever they can to wriggle free. But the last noise I heard on it was that it was looking positive. And to tell you the truth, that was probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and I haven't actually asked a question since. To tell you the truth, so without pulling up the cash flow balance sheet. But no, I think we're good for it. Yeah, I think our insurance company is going to pay out, and some of the government schemes as well have kicked in for us, which is good.
Okay, good. Well, fingers crossed. Jack Stein was the last guy that I chatted to in depth about insurance, because he was one of the few where they'd actually paid specifically for pandemic insurance, and it was really expensive. And they thought they were going to be covered, but even they were having some legal challenges with it. So I need to follow up actually and see how he's getting on. But he was sort of part of the 1% of the industry that was being represented, because for most people it had failed. But I'll chase that up. So good luck. With regards to government support, obviously some of it has been fantastic. Do you think there's anything else the government need to be doing? Have you been part of the sort of JD and the Hospitality Union campaign have been talking about 9 months rent free, and there's been talks of VAT reductions? What's your thoughts on all of that?
No, I think he's bang on. I'm not personally involved in that WhatsApp group that a lot of founders, and I know a few people in our business are. So we're kind of, I'm in it indirectly through those guys. So honest as well. I think he's spot on. The big. The reality is, obviously we don't have a lot of restaurant businesses right now don't have the capital to pay rent, but we also want to be good citizens, and the landlords have got their own bills to pay, right? So no one wants to put someone else out of business, and I think that conversation only works if it gets filtered all the way to the top. So this kind of national timeout is the hashtag, isn't it? I think it's absolutely essential. I think if the government can ease the burden on our landlords, then that can trickle down to us, and I think we can all, in theory, just bounce back. Which is, I mean, I felt that from the word go, really, that if everyone could go into kind of hibernation and we just have to kick start again, press the start button again, then there's a chance we can come out of this relatively unscathed as a economy, not just an industry. So yeah, I think that's definitely something we need to. And our property director put something in our group yesterday. It looks like we had a bit of a breakthrough on that. So
I was going to say, with 37 venues, you must have lots of different landlords, also across different parts of the country. How are they responding? Is it a real mixed response, or is it genuinely positive?
I'm not going to lie, it's a mixed bag. We've got 40 landlords which we deal with when we factor in our prep kitchen, our head office, and another property which we sublet. Without looking at the sheet again, I think it ranges from, yeah, we totally get it, to we're taking you to court. So, I think we're dealing with a myriad of responses at the moment, and I think obviously it's just trying to reach a sensible point with all of them, and the truth is, we're not here to be arseholes. You know what I mean? We're not. We don't want to put anyone out of business, and we're not. It's not about that, but it's about trying to keep the business alive at the end of the day. It's just
it doesn't feel like rocket science, does it? No money in, no money out. But yeah, different landlords are responding in different ways, and I think as an industry we get their challenges as well. And it's not saying, look, it's us against you. It's saying we should be in this together, but it is going to take teamwork to come out the other side of this.
Totally, and I think that's what this Jonathan Downey's effectively saying, isn't he? Really, he's saying that let's get this right to the very top and get this trickle down from the government, and then we can all just kind of shake hands and hibernate.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've started to reopen your doors. You mentioned 22, I think you said. Have you had to make a lot of changes to sort of, cope with what's it called, COVID secure and physical distancing and all that kind of stuff? Big changes to the way that you're operating, and how's that going? Because you're probably ahead of, quite a lot of other people in our sector.
Yeah, big changes. Obviously, the first thing we did was, instead of just putting teams back in the restaurant they were in, we used some tech. And honestly, the technology we've been using has really helped us recently, I have to admit. And it's a decision we made a year ago, which is really great. They're coming home to roost now. The decision to put Workplace in, for example, the Facebook internal comms tool. And through that, we use something called the bot platform. And so we, first thing we did was made sure that we're getting staff back into restaurants that they live closest to. Because it's not always the case that your GM in Peckham actually lives closer to the one in Greenwich, for example. And, it's not something you think about in the old world, but in the new world, it's very important that we're trying to minimise transport time for the guys. We also did it completely on a voluntary basis. So we didn't tell anyone that to work. We put a message out and said, if you want to come back to work, let us know. And from the people that said yes, we sort of triangulated their postcodes and figured out which restaurants they were closest to. And then that informed our decision on which ones we could open. Obviously, we had a list of the ones that we thought would make the most profit and were the most desirable to open. And we tried to triangulate people's locations to those as best we could. We asked some obviously some health questions around trying to establish how many of those people feel like they've had it. And then obviously within the restaurants, we've put in a number of measures around social distancing, PPE, additional checks for the staff. I mean, all staff have to they get their temperature taken at the start of every shift, and anyone over 38 degrees is sent home. So all those measures that the government advised, and obviously in the last couple of days they've just released even more information, which I literally was in a meeting about that today. So I think there's a few extra little bits we're going to bring in. Looking at face masks, I think have just arrived for all our staff in the kitchens, because it's very difficult, obviously, to social distance completely in the kitchen. So I think we've upped our game on PPE to help with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's challenging, I think, isn't it? Kitchens in particular, and I guess it's the sort of ABC team and trying to get people not to cross over as much as possible and stuff like that. And I sympathise with the chefs. Some of them are my team who are just going back as well. Some of them are happy to wear the mask, but in a hot kitchen environment, those masks can be pretty stifling and stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out from an impact on the business. I mean, how much of your customers would be dine in, and how much would be taking away anyway? Were you predominantly dine in, or was it pretty even?
Oh yeah, no, we were never a company that embraced delivery. I've never been the hugest fan. So I think our delivery sales we only ever used Deliveroo, were 15% across the company. Obviously with some overs and unders to various sites, some that do none at all and some that do a lot more than that. So we were only working off 15% base anyway. And obviously now we're seeing huge sales. I mean, we've done in some of the residential sites that we were open last week, we did mid-teen in those sites just on delivery. So there's huge appetite out there for delivery, which is good.
Right. And are you the ones you've opened? Are they just for delivery, or are they doing takeout as well? Can people order and take away?
Just delivery at the moment. Again, conversation today around potentially restarting click and collect to takeaway. It's just another element that we need to just think about how we control it. You've seen some headlines around some Five Guys, I think in Sheffield, got mobbed, didn't it? When they, So obviously our first responsibility is we have a duty of care to our staff, and I think we just wanted to get a couple of weeks of delivery under our belts to see how we could manage people arriving at the restaurant and placing orders in a safe manner. Which we feel like it's something we can do, but we're not there yet. Hopefully not too.
And from a viability perspective, when you're doing the deliveries, because I guess a lot of people will be looking at this and going, right, at the minute I've minimised my costs, my team are furloughed. Is it looking like opening and unfurloughing your crew to do delivery is going to be viable?
No, I think it is. Yeah, we did. We worked out the model. We're working on sort of 5-line teams at the moment. And I think there's enough sales in the business to make that work. I mean, profit for us is very, very simple, and that is it pays wages, and that's it. After that, it's we're not looking to make any money above and beyond paying our staff and paying suppliers, and just weathering that storm. And that's honestly the truth. We're not really no model we're doing is designed to cash any profit. We're a week in, and so far I think there's more than enough sales to support the people that we've brought our furlough.
Yeah, that's good, because I think a lot of people are looking at the early movers and just trying to work out, what we don't want to do is open our doors and make losses. Basically, like you say, it is just about paying some bills and paying the team. I don't think anybody's expecting. There's been a lot of publicity, I guess, around physical distancing and the drop in covers, and maybe you lose, 70% of your covers, and actually, are you going to lose more money? So people are looking for the opportunity to pivot and trying to work out if it's viable. So it's good to hear that it's got some potential, I suppose, at least in your style of food. New openings wise, you've sort of opened a lot over the last few years. Were you planning opening some this year, and has that now been put on pause? Or?
Yeah, we were 2 weeks away from opening in Garrick Street, Covent Garden. So that's pretty much ready to go.
Right.
No date on whether we think we can open that one. It's not a huge delivery hotspot anyway, being bang bang central London, and we've got a couple of other sites near to it that can pick up delivery. So it's not one that we're looking to bring online anytime soon. We had another one lined up for St Catherine's Dock, which was quite far advanced. I think we were probably 6 to 8 weeks away from that one. And then a couple of other deals in the pipeline, which we've paused for the time being. It's frustrating, really, but it's what it is.
Yeah, it is. But you think you'll be able to bring those back on at some point in the future, presumably. So.
Yes, yeah, I think certainly the Garrick Street and St Cat's ones, because from a sort of cost capex point of view, obviously most of the money had been spent already, so it was not necessarily eating into any cash flow in going forward. So we feel like we've got the people to open them. If we feel like it's safe to do it, and there's going to be custom, then it's something we'll definitely look at when we can. But I think we're a way off. I think we're a little way off eating business for the time being, aren't we?
I think so, yeah. So what are your thoughts for the future? I mean, I suppose, do you see any positives coming off the back of this? It's clearly going to be a huge shift in the whole marketplace. I guess a lot of people, aren't going to come through this. It's been well documented, the challenges of hospitality in the last few years, the sort of tight margins. You saw Jamie Oliver's and Coluccio's and Patisserie Valerie's and others. You guys were in a strong spot, I suppose, with some good margins and some good investment. So you'll come out the other side. What's your prognosis for the industry overall, I suppose? And then, do you think that will create some interesting opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's going to be some casualties, aren't there? And I certainly would start by saying that, we feel confident. We feel like we've got great backers that are supportive. We went into this with healthy margins, so we feel like we've got a really good chance of coming out of it. But it's certainly not guaranteed, of course. We just don't know how long this is going to go on for, with second or third spikes, whatever for sure, there's going to be some casualties. I mean, people are obviously already reading about one or two big names. I guess if you were struggling on the way in, you're probably going to struggle to get through it. So I think those guys will be the first to go. But it just depends how long this goes on for. And in any situation, I guess something I've guarded against, certainly in our business, is that if there is a big purge, presumably it's going to be the super good operators that are left, which, you might think, okay, we come out of this and there's going to be less competition, more sales, which arguably in the first instance there might be. But the way I see it is that the bar will just be significantly raised and you're going to be benchmarking yourselves against some very good operators. I think the challenge certainly will be there, that if you want to mix it in the new world, you're going to have to be on top of your game. Certainly in the long term, which is a good challenge. I like that. I like that challenge. It's good. I want to, we want to go up against as I mentioned before, the Pilgrims boys and the guys that are out there doing great things. Great food, great concepts. Good people. So those are the people that you want to match yourselves against, and I think there's going to be plenty of them in the new world. So for me, the bar is going to be significantly raised, and it's going to be, the transition between now and whatever the getting back to normal, whenever that is, or whether, if there ever is. It's just trying to understand what that looks like, really, isn't it? And how you navigate the new normal, as people are saying.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there's an inevitability that we'll get back to normal eventually. I guess it's just a period of time, whether it's a few years, whether it's 1 year, whether it's 6 months. And I guess vaccines and all sorts of variables that far more intelligent people than you and I are hopefully chewing the fat on. And we won't attempt to do it on this podcast. But I guess hospitality's been around for thousands of years, hasn't it? And I'm sure it will come back. And I do feel like, the industry needed some sort of reset, in the fact it felt like it was an oversupplied market in the last few years. It felt that margins were too tight. Food costs, staff costs had gone up at quite some pace, and there was a lot of people in the industry struggling. However, I don't think anybody, needed or foresaw anything quite as catastrophic as this. But I do hope the right, a number of the right players come out at the other side of this. But I also hope there's a bit of a gap in the market for, those community venues and local venues, I suppose, to stand strong, or at least the ones that support the local markets and
absolutely,
all those awesome local beers that you sell.
Absolutely, I think
okay,
really important.
Yeah. Anything else? So thank you for sparing the time. I appreciate how busy it is, and thanks for being honest and candid. Sorry for discussing any awkward subjects. I hope you don't get too big of a bollocking, Philip. But is there anything else pressing that you're seeing going on? Any other views, I suppose, on what's happening that you'd like to share?
No, I guess I was going to just expand on. I think your point there. Really, you kind of alluded to. I think you seem to allude that I think there's something the industry needed, and I think I would agree with you that remember the glory days when we were just talking about Brexit, we're going back to those times. There was this whole hospitality proud thing started going around, and I got a bit grumpy about it, to be honest, and I still am, because I think something that Brexit has made, that the immigration stuff is going to force a lot of restaurants, was forcing restaurants down, was that we don't as an industry, we're not covering ourselves in glory, and we've got to drop our egos. We've got to stop pretending that we're this amazing place to work and that we're just this, everyone loves it, because the reality is they don't, and I'm a bit fed up of hearing people say it, to be honest, within our industry, because they say the first route to solving your problem is admitting you've got one, right? And the hospitality industry has the worst record for mental health. We expect long hours. It's low paid. It's transient. It's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as our head of people calls it. We surround people in alcohol, and we all know the kind of reputation that hospitality has. And I think we can't expect in a post-Brexit world, and certainly a post-Corona world, that these English kids coming out of university or college are going to be interested in working in that business. So I think we've all got to adapt. And we were having those conversations pre-Corona, and I think if anything, it's only been amplified now. And that the truth is, I guess I'm not hospitality proud all the time, because we point that lens at ourselves, and this is the journey we've been on. I think we touched on it last time we spoke on the last show we did with you, in that we've got to start looking at ourselves and treating our people better, and looking at ways to PR our business better. Otherwise, we are going to be in a world of pain. When Corona finishes and immigration Brexit kicks in, we're going to be in a world of pain if we stick to our current ways. And I guess we've got to stop saying things like, what an amazing industry it is and everyone wants to work in it, because the truth is they don't, and it isn't at times. And I think, if anything, I'm hoping the new world will have more of the people that take that seriously than the ones that didn't. And I would expect a correlation between the ones that come out of this that are trying to do the right things and the ones that don't, to be honest, if I can be bullish. And there we go. That was a glass of wine, a full glass of wine.
No, it's good. I hope. End in a catastrophic trouble.
You know what I mean?
No, I hope you're right. I think
that's a fair comment. I mean, I know I know an industry that are of like mind, and I certainly would be very careful not to position ourselves as some kind of holier than thou. We're perfect. Check our list out, aren't we amazing? Because we're not. Trust me, we've been on this journey, and we're not as good at people as we should be. And we're trying really hard to do that. And I guess I'm calling out the ones that aren't even trying. Will they exist in the new world?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Will we be better off for it? Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, and it's hard, I think, to talk about that in some ways, because nobody wants to see, business directors, business people, investors suffer or their teams suffer because they lose their jobs. But you're right, there did need to be some sort of correction. I do think that there's a bit of a problem in the fact that margins have been so tight. It's probably been hard to pay the wages that we should, and some of that comes down to the public being willing to spend, what food's worth. But I think that's the same across the food sector. I think it's the same in the supermarkets. I think the environmental impact of what we eat and where we buy our food is huge, and it's very easy to say that as a middle class person who used to have probably a little bit more disposable income. Don't have a lot at the moment because all of my businesses are closed. But I think we need to take more responsibility for what we eat, where we buy it, and spend a little bit more on food. And if we can make hospitality more professional, and if off the back of this there's less restaurants and they can charge a little bit more and spread that revenue through their teams better, because I think there's a lot of business operators that have the ethos, but the first thing is they have to do is stay in business to actually keep employing people. And then the second thing they need to do is, if they can stay in business, I guess, is improve the welfare and the standards and the professionalism of the industry. So I sympathize, but I don't think the rapid expansion, VC backed kind of race to the bottom on price and scale at all costs has done the industry any favors in the last few years. And if we can turn back the clock a little bit to local kind of venues looking after their teams, looking after the community, buying from the right suppliers, then hallelujah to that.
Listen, I challenge accepted, because that is the challenge for us with Honest. We want to grow this business, but we want to try and do it in the right way, and for sure we're going to make some mistakes along the way. We already have, but again, and you said there's nuances to every business, and I'm certainly not going to sit here and presume to understand everybody's own cash flow and the motivation behind some of the decisions they made. I guess my overarching point really is that you go back 3 months, a lot of people crowing about immigration and how unfair it was that Priti Patel called our staff low skilled, and then Corona hit, and overnight they sacked half their staff, and it's like, well, you can't say one thing and then do the other, and then suddenly backtrack when Rishi comes up. It doesn't fit for me sometimes. So I think there's just a bit of a PR image here that I think as an industry we've got to take, everybody in it's got to take responsibility for, us included. And I think if we don't fix it, we're going to be in a world of pain in a few years' time. There we go. Doom and
no,
gloom.
it's true. And and when I talk about, I suppose, VCs and scale and all that, I don't think necessarily that big is bad and that scale is bad. I think absolutely you can do it the right way, and I think
stick to your guns. You're a local champion. I've seen your messages. They're you're and I like that about you. You're a champion of the local guy, and as am I. I mean, we were a small indie startup upon a day, and we still try and do our bit for those for the local scene, as you know. So I love that.
Yeah, you do.
I think.
Yeah.
Hold your line, man. You're on it. I think you're a local champion, and I think you should stay that way. So it's good.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, but I'm also a learner.
Do the right things. That's what it needs. That's what this industry needs. Hold us to account. Hold us to account. And if you come back and interview me again in a year's time, and we've made a load of shitty decisions and have turned into the next crappy chain, then you should tell me.
I will do. Well, there's definitely some benefits of investors as well, though, because I committed in a slightly emotional video to my team that went out online that I would pay them until the end of March, but there was no way that I could have paid them even half into the end of April, not because I didn't want to, but just because we were completely and utterly skint and there was no money left in the account. So sometimes I'm mildly envious of being able to turn to somebody and say, look, I want to do the right thing. Can you help finance it? Because there are benefits to scale in having the cash and the investment to make us a more professional industry. But you're right, fundamentally I suppose it's the British way, support the underdog, isn't it, and criticize when people get big. But genuinely I was think you guys have walked that tightrope really well, and it's good to catch up again. So thank you. Where should people go if they want to follow your journey and keep up with date what's going on? Is there a particular social channel that's best?
Instagram, I guess. The usual honest stuff. Instagram, we've got and Twitter and Facebook. I guess just
all of the above. Perfect.
I'm trying to think if you're expecting a better answer there. If you're suggesting people should follow my Twitter account or Instagram, then I would strongly recommend they don't, because it's terribly boring and nondescript. But if you want to keep up to date with what Honest up to, obviously hit us up on our website and stuff and see what we're doing. But yeah,
perfect. All right. Well, look, thanks for taking the time out. You did well. The kids were quiet in the background, so congratulations. Thank you for sparing the time. Hugely appreciated. And I will take you up on that. I'll come back in a year's time, and hopefully we'll be having a super positive conversation about the amazing way the industry rebounded and all the wonderful employment opportunities it's got.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks, mate.
All right. Cheers, Mike.
A huge thanks again to Philip for being so honest, excuse the pun. You can tell when people spin the PR nonsense or when people are genuinely authentic. Honest have got some great investment and some really experienced operators now at board level, but I can see how Philip keeps the ethos and original honest concept at the forefront of all that they do. He's too principled to compromise, and hats off to him for that. And since he asked so nicely, I will indeed try and hold him to account and catch up again in a year's time to see how they are getting on trying to add scale without compromising on those founding principles of honest. I really think with Philip and Tom at the helm, they will pull it off, and I very much hope that they do. Once again, please do leave a review, and with all of my businesses currently closed and the future looking so incredibly difficult to predict, never have I been more appreciative if you can become a supporter of the podcast via Patreon by heading over to humansofhospitality.co.uk/donate. And whilst you're there, please sign up for the weekly newsletter. Thanks, and I'll be back again soon. In fact, the next episode will be out on Thursday and is a chat with Peter Ducker from the Institute of Hospitality that I really, really enjoyed. Cheers.